All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Volume 2, Series 1 of our Meet the Engineer series of events. We've had 5 of this last year, and they were wildly successful, from electrical and mechanical engineers to the finalists of the Young Women Engineer of the Year award. We're hoping to host plenty of these great events this year as well. My name is Dr. Toby Elishakin, and I will be your host for this evening. Joining me today as my co-host is Shyam. Now, this event is an opportunity for young students, school leavers, and degree holders to understand more about engineering, both in terms of the work itself and in terms of personal experiences. Like I mentioned, this is the first event for this year, so we plan to have more of these in the future where other people, engineers, technologists alike, can come around and talk about their work and their journey. We've got a few house rules to quickly run through before we go ahead. First of all, as you might have heard at the start of this event, the event is being recorded so that those who are unable to attend can revisit this on the IAT Young Professional Network YouTube page. Then the link to the CPD certificates for this event will be posted in the chat by my co-host. We've also got a survey for you to fill as well afterwards, and this will be included in the chat. It helps us to improve on our event hosting capabilities. Please use the Q&A functions to prepare your questions to the speakers. This webinar should take between 45 minutes and 1 hour, and we expect to and will try to keep the time. Now, our speakers are 2 amazing young professionals, Sophie Harker and Robert Allison. They'll be speaking to us about their journeys so far and their experiences as engineers. Sophie will go first, followed by questions for her, and then Robert will go afterwards, followed by questions for him. Afterwards, we have a few important announcements, and then we will close the event. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Sophie Harker.
Hiya. All right. Am I right to share my screen?
Yeah.
I can't while you're sharing. There we go. Thank you very much. Let's go to my desktop. Apologies, the really boring can you see my screen bit. If you could let me know when you can see that, that'd be great.
You go.
Perfect, thank you. So hi, evening everyone. My name is Sophie Harker, as you can see. I'm an aerospace engineer and have worked on a whole host of projects. And I'm going to run through them super quick. I've got about 10 minutes, so I apologise if this is going to be a little bit rushed, but hopefully you get a bit of an idea over what my career has been for the last 7 or 8 years. So sort of going back as to how I got into all of this, and here come my awkward teenage photos, is I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my career, my life in general. I knew I was good at maths and that was kind of it, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. And then so I went to the when I was about 16, I went to Kennedy Space Center out in the US, and decided that I wanted to be an astronaut, believe it or not, and still dreaming of that, still working towards it. So I came back to the UK, kind of did everything spacey I could do. Started at the University of Nottingham to study in maths. Again, I was good at it, so I just went and did that. And then when I was there in my first term there, I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Helen Sharman, who's that woman in the far left photo with me. And for those that don't know, she was the first British person in space. So she was the first person to ever say to me, have you thought about engineering? And I was 19 at this point. I'd never thought of engineering. I thought engineering was something that featured a washing machine. So it was the only time I ever heard the word. So she was the first person to really open my eyes to it. And so between my sort of third and fourth years of university, so I tailored all my maths degree towards applied maths, which is basically engineering. And between my third and fourth year, did an internship in software engineering in Christchurch with BAE Systems. So Christchurch in Dorset, not New Zealand, unfortunately. That would have been nice, but it was in Dorset. And I had a really, really, really great time and really enjoyed it and had a lot of fun. So I decided to go back on the graduate scheme when I graduated after my master's. So I did like an integrated master's degree. So over that grad scheme, I worked on a whole host of different things. So at the time, the BAE Systems grad scheme was 4 6-month placements across the business. So I'll start in the top left. So this one was actually what I did in my internship. So this truck here is called a Falcon truck, and Falcon, really oversimplified, it's kind of like the army's version of the internet. So that's kind of where I started and where I kind of fell in love with engineering, as it were, and doing what I do. So coming back on the graduate scheme, coming back on the graduate scheme, I joined BAE Systems and did something called central engineering. And if I'm brutally honest, I didn't enjoy it at all. I really didn't enjoy it. So this is kind of this bottom left picture here. And basically we were looking at kind of the tools and methods that are used within BAE Systems, rather than actually using the tools and methods myself. And it just wasn't really for me. But that was the nice thing about the graduate scheme, is you get to try out loads of different types of engineering, different projects, different teams, and figure out what you did like. But one of the cool things I did get to do while I was in that team was look at aircrew clothing for the Typhoon, and understand how we can commonize that across all of our platforms and partners and things like that. So I got to play around with a lot of cool equipment. So I did enjoy that part of it. So after that 6 months, I decided I wanted to actually work on a product. I actually wanted to work on an aircraft. So I started work in Typhoon's cockpit group, which is this blurry image in the middle there. And I got to do some design engineering. So actually updating part of the cockpit to modern integrated tools and techniques, tools and equipment for the Typhoon. So there are buttons that are on Typhoon that I've designed. There's sort of layouts of the screen that are on there that I've designed, and we got to take that through a load of test pilots and through the simulators. And I was, for like weeks at a time, I would just sit on a simulator playing around with all these different designs. So that was really, really good fun. I really enjoyed that. So after I'd done that for 6 months, I kind of decided that, well, now I know, what Typhoon can do. So I'd played around with it. I've flown it as many millions of times. Like, I knew what it could do, but I wanted to know how it did it. So I joined Typhoon Aerodynamics, which is what this foggy picture up on the right, top right, is resembling, to understand, how is it that it does all these impressive things. And so this was mostly a performance aerodynamics team, and it was my first sort of foray into aerodynamics, and I really enjoyed it. And it's probably where I found sort of my niche in engineering, and particularly in aerospace engineering, sort of coming from that maths background and moving into that really sort of the nearest neighbor, as it were, for me. And so I really enjoyed that. And we would look at sort of, okay, if we were going to put an external fuel tank onto a Typhoon of this mass, this size, whatever, can it still fly for a start? Can it perform how we want it to do? Can it do performance takeoff? Does it have to slow down when it does a turn? All those sort of things that we were just analyzing and looking at and playing around with to see what the performance of the aircraft would be if you change it in some way. So I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed it so much I was actually going to go to Munich and work on the similar thing, but with the German Airbus team. But around that time we invested in a company called Reaction Engines. So for those who don't know, Reaction Engines, they're a very small companies, about 150 of them at the moment, based in Oxford and out in Colorado in the US. And they're developing something called Sabre, which is the synergetic air-breathing rocket engine. I do a full lecture for like an hour and a bit on what Sabre is, so I won't do that now. But it's essentially an air-breathing engine and a rocket engine smushed together with a very, very, very special heat exchanger at the front. And that is integrated into a concept called Skylon, which is what this bottom right picture is here. There's loads of other applications for it and other things that I'll talk about in a minute. But the main thing I was looking at the time was Skylon. And I kind of, when we announced that investment, I obviously, being a big space nerd, I was like, I really want to go and work on that. And I kind of just nagged our engineering director until he let me go. And that's kind of exactly what happened. I just knocked on his door and was like, I I want to get involved. I don't care how. I don't care if it's staying working here, just doing some projects on it, or whether I can get down there, or whether I could be part of the project team here. Like whatever it is, I don't care. I want to do it. And thankfully they listened. And I was the first BAE person to get seconded down to reaction engines. And I had the time of my life. It was phenomenal. It was really, really good fun. And I worked on trajectory analysis. So I was optimizing the trajectories of Skylon, both ascent into space and descent back into Earth. And it's interesting how the two dramatically differ, mostly because of what you're optimizing. So sort of when you're in ascent, you're looking at optimizing your fuel use, and when you're looking at descent back onto Earth, you're looking at actually minimizing the temperature on the surfaces of the vehicle. So it's a very, very different mathematical problem. But I really enjoyed it, really loved it. And when I finished my time on that, that was the end of my graduate scheme. So I needed to look for what we call an exit role, so like a full-time job essentially. And so I decided, I came back and I said I didn't want to go back and work on another project. I wanted to stay on this project. I was the only person in BAE that had any real experience and knowledge working with Sabre and Skylon and the other applications of it. I wanted to carry on. And I was really lucky that they created a role for me in our advanced projects team, as it was called at the time, looking at sort of fast jet future concept work and taking care of the reaction engines work. So I got to work on sort of space plane aerodynamics and hypersonic aerodynamics, which was probably where sort of my speciality ended up becoming. And so after about 2.5 years with them, partnered with Reaction Engines and Rolls-Royce, we ended up working towards a submission to the MOD, the Ministry of Defence, for a project to do with hypersonics. I can't really talk too much about what that project is, unfortunately, but it was to essentially explore the hypersonic space using Reaction Engines technology and obviously Rolls-Royce and BAE Systems expertise in those areas. So it was successful, which was great. And at that point, I decided that it was probably time for me to move on from this project, mostly because I figured that not only do I need to know, understand these vehicles, but I need to actually understand how you go from concept to real thing. So I decided to make a move into Team Tempest. So, before I move on, just point here is that this project was really, really valuable for me, mostly because it got me into sort of media work, because I was the first to comment down there. Like I was doing a lot of media work, internal and external to BAE Systems, which was really good fun, which is what that bottom picture is. And it also got me my chartership. So I got chartered when I was 25. So I'm actually one of the youngest people to ever get chartered. And again, that was because of that particular project, and it was only because I nagged to get myself there. So there's my lesson learned for all of you is nag and you eventually get what you want. But yeah, so I got chartered through this project, which was pretty exciting to say the least. So yes, change of pace, moving on to Team Tempest. So rather than joining the aerodynamics team, I actually joined the flight control systems team. And I say team quite loosely because there wasn't many of us, and we had to sort of rebuild a capability that BAE haven't really touched for a long time. So to explain, flight control system is kind of like the central nervous system of the vehicle. Like many of you may already know this, but it kind of like it's the brain in the middle of the flight control computer, and then all the moving parts and all the nerves in the system that create that movement, as well as all the sensors, so all your eyes, your ears, your nose, etc., of the vehicle, if that makes sense. So you create that kind of body, and without it the plane doesn't fly. So it's a really, really, really important system. And so we were looking at sort of future technologies for what Team Tempest will eventually become, because it's not a real thing yet, but understanding how we'll take those technologies and embed them and integrate them together to actually make whatever vehicle this becomes actually viable and flyable, which involves sort of lots of testing and sims work and things like that. So it was really good fun. So that was Team Tempest, and then about just under 4 months ago, I moved again. And this time I moved because I wanted to get some more experience of rapid development work, and I wanted to get some more sort of senior experience and management experience and leadership experience. So I am now the Assistant Chief Engineer of Electric Products at BAE. I am very, very, very excited to do this, mostly because it makes little 12-year-old eco warrior inside me very, very happy to be doing something that's sort of in the green space or green aerospace space, as it were. So within electric products, we are looking at a whole host of different things. So the main one that's been announced that people know about is this T650. So this is a heavy lift drone. It can lift about 300 kilograms that we're working on with a company called Malloy Aeronautics. We have other projects in the work at the moment. So the other one that got announced just before Christmas was a joint venture with Eve, which is an Embraer sort of spin-off, looking at sort of air taxis and things like that, and how we can apply that for military applications. And then we have other projects, but unfortunately haven't been released yet. But keep an eye on this space because it's interesting, it's exciting. But yeah, so we're looking at a whole host of different projects, and essentially what I do is understand, is bring all these technologies together and understand where our challenges are, how we're going to govern it, how we're going to certify it. Because the thing is with these things, they're so big. Like this thing itself is like 500 kilograms, like possibly more. So one of those things falling out of the sky, it's like the size of a small car falling out of the sky. Like you kind of got to be able to certify these things and make sure that they're safe and usable and those sort of things. And we've got to map those things also to the future trajectories of technologies like battery technology, for example, looking at solid state batteries and understanding when they might start to come into play, and mapping those into the development of this vehicle and the development or the product life cycle of this vehicle. And on top of that, looking at the whole life cycle of these vehicles and going, okay, so it may be green to fly it and operate it, but what about the manufacturing? What about the end use? What about the disposal of it at the end? And it's understanding that full end-to-end life cycle and making sure that that is green and friendly, not just the vehicle itself. So that's what I'm currently doing at the moment. I've got like no minutes left, so I'm going to blast through this super quick. Essentially, as I mentioned, I've been really lucky and got to do a lot of media work. I got chartered very young and things like that, and I've had really good opportunities that I've managed to find and also exploit within my career so far. And I've been really fortunate to have won quite a few awards from that. So sort of these are my three sort of like top ones, if that makes sense. So the Sir Henry Royce Medal on the far left, which is an IAT award, as you can see. The IAT's Young Women Engineer back in 2018. And then the Royal Academy of Engineers Young Engineer of the Year in 2019. They were sort of the three big ones that I won and sort of really proved to myself that I can do this, I suppose. And it's sort of a reason I put these up is not to brag, to be like, oh, look at these awards I've won, I'm so shiny. It's not that. It's to sort of show that I did not anticipate that. I was not prepared for that. I didn't go out starting my career thinking this was going to happen. And in fact, when I did start and I saw people winning these awards, I thought they were superhuman. And I was like, there's no way I could do that. Like they're just so smart, so unbelievable, talented. And I was like, there's no way I could do that. And I didn't pursue it. It kind of just happened. And I think the moral here is that it's not necessarily that everyone will do this or that you have to do this or whatever, but it could be anybody. Anybody can come from this. Anyone can go and achieve these things. It's not something you have to be like, the most phenomenal human being in the world to go and do that. Because if I can, everybody else definitely can. But yeah, I'll blast through very quick. So I'm very lucky. I got to do a lot of media work through the YWE. If you're members of the IT, you probably unfortunately see my face a lot in around. I got to send a clarinet to space. That was pretty fun. Blast through, as I say, lots of media work. Got to do lots of radio, Sky TV. I've been on a lot. I'm a meme now. That was fun. I'm an advert on Angry Birds, like all sorts of really random things. I was on Extreme Cake Makers. Again, and it's one of the big things I got to do, which was really exciting, is kind of travel the world. So I got to go all over the place and talking to people about engineering, which was just a lot of fun. I can't deny that. I'm going to skip through all this super quick because we just don't have time. But I think the main thing I want to get out from this is that I've had quite a varied aerospace engineering career. A lot of people tend to stick on one project because their projects are very long timescales. But I've been lucky and moved around. And as you can see, but the sheer glee on my face in these photos is I've had a lot of fun. I really love it. It's a really exciting place to be, particularly now with the sort of the eco challenges that we're facing and the fact that the industry is stepping up now and is really starting to make big progress towards that. So the main thing is I'm having a lot of fun. That's the best advice I can give, really. So I'll end it there. If obviously we've got questions now, but if you've got any more that you think of later that you don't or you don't want to ask in a public forum, feel free to find me online and I'm happy to answer any questions. Apologies, it's been a super fast whistle stop tour through that. I'm happy to expand on anything as and when.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Sophie. That was amazing. It's definitely feels like you've lived a longer life than it seems you have. You've done quite a lot of things, and it's really quite impressive. Well done. We've got actually a few questions for you in the Q&A section, so I'll just get right to it. And the questions include mine as well, so get ready. So the first question here is from a Phoebe, who was asked what your favorite project has been so far, as you've been involved in quite a number of them.
Yeah. Oh, that's hard. I'd say that working with Skylon and doing the hypersonic work has probably been the most sort of career defining thing I've done. Is what I'm sort of mostly known for. It's what like I have an international reputation for. So that's probably the most sort of impactful one I've done. But I think I am pretty damn excited about doing green stuff, I'm not going to lie, and the battery powered work. And we are looking beyond just battery as well, but that is very exciting to me personally. So it's still a bit early days for me to say it's my favorite, and I'm very, very busy, very stressed, in a good way, I promise. So yeah, so if you ask me, maybe in a year or two's time, that might pip it, but we'll see. For now, I'd say, yeah, working on Skylon and the hypersonics work is probably my favorite thing.
All right, thanks for that. Another question here we've got from an anonymous attendee is, what do you think is the best route to get into the aerospace sector post A-levels?
Yeah, good question. So in terms of aerospace is very multidisciplinary. So there are so many different types of engineer. Like, as you can see, I tried a whole host of different things and eventually settled on aerodynamics, but then moved into sort of systems integration, and now I'm an assistant chief engineer. So they're very different disciplines, and I rely on lots of different disciplines. So I rely on people that have mechanical engineering backgrounds, electrical engineering backgrounds, software engineering. Like, we need people from all over the place. So the main sort of thing I can recommend is to follow what you're interested in, and understand and sort of play around with the different areas and go, okay, so do I want to do sort of something that's a bit more software-y? Do I want to do something that's a bit more applied? And then the second question you want to ask yourself is, how do I want to get there? Do I want to go to university, or do I want to go straight into work? Both routes are completely viable for aerospace. And in fact, it's probably one of the industries where both routes are as equally viable, which is really great about them. And particularly apprenticeships these days, you can get something called a higher apprenticeship, where you have you come out with a full degree, not just a sort of a NVQ levels or foundation degree. You come out with a full bachelor's degree or honours degree, and it's all paid for. It does take a while, it takes about 5 years, and obviously you get paid for it, paid for the work you do during that time, but it's definitely a new option that wasn't there when I was at the time. So it's worth exploring what route you want to go forward, whether you want to go to university or not.
Thank you very much for pointing that out. It's actually something I've also noticed recently, seeing quite a number of people that have taken that route to go through apprenticeship, and also managed to get a degree, an honors degree, a bachelor's degree alongside. And I think it definitely needs to be more popularized, as it creates really good options for school leavers. Someone has asked if an aerospace engineering MEng best degree to get into defense and aerospace, and which universities do you think are best for this?
Yes. So again, it doesn't matter. So I did a maths degree. I didn't even do engineering, and everyone assumes I did engineering, and I didn't. I did maths fully. So it doesn't matter. It's what you're really interested in. And I know a lot of universities, like as I mentioned, I went to the University of Nottingham, and they don't offer an aerospace engineering degree. They offer or at least they did at the time, I'm not sure if it's still the case, but they offer a mechanical engineering degree that you can then specialize into aerospace at a later date. And equally, you can just go and do software if that's what you're interested in. You can just go and do let's say just, they're very complicated degrees. So it's not just in that sense. I mean, just as in only specialize on that. So you can go and do whatever subject you find most interesting. And trust me, aerospace will have a need for it. It's not just, you could do systems engineering is a big one, for example, or you can do physics, you can do chemistry, whatever, like any STEM subject, they will take you for it. And with that, with universities, there are some universities, yes, that have very close links to aerospace. So Loughborough is one of the key ones. Cranfield is a big one, but they only offer postgraduates, so they only offer masters and PhDs there. Southampton's one, Manchester's one. There's a lot of big universities in the aerospace world, but you don't have to go to one of those. Like, they're not picky in terms of the university. They're very much about the individual and showing that they have the interest and the passion. That's all they really care about. So wherever you want to go is really my advice. Like,
yeah, thanks for that very, very nice explanation. It's important that wherever you go, it's just to, I guess, focus on your own personal development and ensuring that you have the right tools to work at an institution like BAE Systems. But then, it was also nice that you provided at least some of the universities that you know off the top of your head, so people who might still want to, really toe that line would actually go there. So thanks for that. One question that was from myself, and because we've got a number of people that have asked this question in the past, you said you did a grad scheme, and I just wanted to ask what you found has been the benefit of that, as opposed to maybe just going straight into work for an organization.
Yeah. So the best thing about it, and this is for me personally, because like I say, I did maths, so I didn't know anything really about engineering or aircraft. Like, I didn't like it at all. It was a miracle they hired me, really. And so I needed to try a load of different parts of aerospace to understand what I really wanted to work on and how my skills best fit it, and where I was going to be happiest and most interested. So the grad scheme gave me that. That's what it gave me. And I mean, it's a different scheme now, and each like aerospace giant as well as small aerospace companies will do it differently. But what I enjoyed about my grad scheme was that I got to try 4 completely different placements. And as I mentioned earlier, I found one I really didn't like, and I found a few I really did like, and I found ones that I enjoyed but wasn't particularly sort of my favorite thing to do, and I was more excited by other things. So it just gave me that opportunity to try it and make a sort of a contribution in different places and go, okay, where am I best fitted? And that's what I loved about mine. But each grad scheme is different, so it's worth really, if you are thinking about a grad scheme, it's really investigating what they actually do. Speaking to someone ideally who's been on it fairly recently is generally my best advice, and just reach out to somebody on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever, and they'll be happy to share, I'm sure.
All right. Very quickly, someone has asked what more we need to do, I guess, to encourage better percentage of women to become engineers, in your opinion?
Yeah. It's a difficult one. It's a really difficult question. And I don't personally believe in quotas. I don't think that helps. But what I do believe in is being as sort of visible and meeting and greet. I can't get my words out now, and reaching even as many people as we can, because if you take me as an example, I don't come from a STEM background at all. My dad is a carpenter. My mum was a teaching assistant in a primary school. I was the first person in my family the first generation to go to university. I'm still the only one that did any kind of science. So it's very much new, and I didn't know what engineering was. It took till I was 19. I thought it was somebody with a spanner, like 19. And so I think we need to make sure we reach out to as many people as possible, because if I hadn't had that very lucky opportunity to meet Helen Sharman, I wouldn't be an engineer. And the more visible we can be and the more people we can sort of dispel the myths around engineering and explain what it is, then naturally we will have more women in engineering. That's not to say there aren't problems within industry that need addressing. There definitely are. But in terms of enticing them to join, it's very much about just dispelling the myths about what it is and reaching as many people who wouldn't normally be reached.
All right. Thank you very much for that.
All right.
Another question, if we've still got a little bit of time. So have you found BAE Systems supportive in helping you achieve your career goals, both in terms of the grad scheme and post the grad scheme?
Yeah, I have been very, very, very lucky in that they are really supportive. So they have given me a lot of time to go and do all the extra work that I do. So they give me time to sit on committees and boards for IAT, for Royal Aero, Royal Academy. They give me a lot of time to go out and do media work. The media trained me. They've paid for me to go on a lot of courses. Funnily enough, I'm off for 3 months to go and do a course in like 2 weeks time, and they're happy to do that. And they are super, super supportive. I am very, very fortunate, because there are many people out there that do not have that kind of support. And I'm really fortunate that I've had some really great managers that are happy to support the extra time I take out of the office, or to sort of help me balance my workload when I have those things going on, and to really challenge me. And I've had, again, very fortunate to have very, very senior sponsors in the company that are constantly pushing and helping me find opportunities and prepare me for them. So I've had a lot of mentors and sponsors where I have really made my career. And like going back to those awards, if I wouldn't have won them if it weren't for them. And it's not because I didn't do the things to deserve to win them, but it was more because they were the ones that encouraged me to either put myself forward if I had to put it forward, or they nominated me and they pushed me forward and pushed me to do those things. So I've been very, very, very fortunate with BAE. I really have.
All right, lovely. So for everyone out there, make sure you apply to BAE Systems. And lastly, very quick question, if you can answer this in the next 30 seconds. We've got another one later on, but this is one that, if possible, if you could maybe answer for us later on, or in the chat. So the last one is, what is the ideal length of time to stay on a project before moving on?
Oh, hard question. And it depends. It really does. So I was on my last project for about 2 years before I was like, it's time to move on. The previous one I was on for 2.5, and possibly would have stayed till 3. It was just the way the opportunity fell. And so for me, I don't think there's a time limit. I think there's an opportunity limit. I think there's you will get throughout those 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, however long you're on a project for, you will get a number of opportunities that will appear for you to move. You'll get a number of open doors that will be there, and it's choosing the door you really want to go through enough to leave what you're doing now. So I left that first project, that's the project with reaction engines, and it was very bittersweet. I didn't want to leave it to an extent, because I really enjoyed it, and I really loved the people I was working with. But I knew when the opportunity for FCS came up that it was time for me to try something new, and it was time for me to develop myself to be able to help that project that I really loved later along the line, so I can go back to it, and I will be ready for it when it gets to that stage. If I stayed in it that whole time, I probably wouldn't be able to give my best to it. I wouldn't be able to progress it as much as I could have if I had experience elsewhere.
All right, thank you very much for answering all those questions. They came in thick and fast. For the last question there, we will try and answer it after the second speaker's spoken, but we'll just need to get going really quickly. All right, thank you very much, Sophie. All right, can we have Robert? Yeah. Hello,
everyone.
Robert.
Yeah.
Could you share screen and go ahead.
Can everyone see that? Great stuff. Okay then. Great. Yeah. So thanks Toby for the introduction, and thanks Sophie for that really interesting talk. I learned a lot from that myself, actually. So my name's Rob, Systems Engineer at MBDA, but I'll get onto that later. First of all, I'd just like to thank the London YPs for inviting me along to this. I'm a really big fan of the Meet the Engineer format, and I know it's a really active local network, so it's really great to be here talking. And I just want to start off by sort of giving an overview about what I sort of hope to talk about today. So I hope to give a sort of high-level overview to the aerospace industry, maybe answer a few questions about that, and then I'll go into me and how I ended up here, where I'm working now and where I did work, and also talk about a little bit of my work with the IET as well. So I don't know if the audience has access to the chat or not, but I just wanted to see what sort of answers we got when I asked this. So what do people think an aerospace engineer is? It can be a one-word answer. It doesn't matter at all. I just want to see see what people are thinking. So yeah, if you could just answer in the chat, put a couple of words in there. Multi-skilled. Yep, agreed. Any more? Multi-skilled is a good one. Technical, yeah, definitely. Intelligent, hopefully. Hands-on, some of them, yeah, certainly. Any more? Works on planes and flying objects, yeah, that's a good one. Analytical, high expectation. You'd certainly hope so. If you're getting on a plane, you definitely want the engineer to have high expectations of themselves. So yeah, they're all some really good answers. And I see the GIF has stopped playing, but perhaps these guys were engineers. Who knows? So I get asked this question a lot, and I certainly was asking myself this question before I got into industry. Even through my degree, I was probably asking myself this as well. And I think a good way to break it down is aerospace is an industry, and in that industry, there's lots of different types of engineers. So you might see some degree titles, some aerospace, some aeronautical. Aerospace typically is inside and outside of this atmosphere. Aeronautical typically deals with things inside this atmosphere. But the principles are much the same. And as Sophie was talking about in her talk, a lot of the degrees will end you up in the same place anyway. So what does the aerospace industry look like? I just wanted to give a few examples of some of the companies in the industry. I've tried to go for some supply chain companies as well, so not just the tier ones that everybody sees all the time. So there is a real lot of option in the aerospace industry. Companies like Airbus, which do a huge amount in the space sector, and also the civil sector. Lockheed Martin, which covers defence and lots of other things as well. GKN Aerospace, Honeywell, who even branch out into automotive really too. And Moog, who make actuation systems that go in the airliners that everybody flies on, that go in the airliners that Boeing produce, and that Airbus produce as well. And then of course you've got the big ones like Rolls-Royce. And Martin Baker, that's one of my favorite aerospace companies, because the ejection seat is I think one of the marvel inventions of aerospace. Really clever stuff. So again, if I get you to use the chat again, I'm going to talk about space companies next. And when I say space companies, I want to see what company first jumps to people's minds. So if I said, name the most notable space company of the 21st century, put that in the chat. I've tried to guess what you're going to put on the next slide. And I want to see if I'm right or not. NASA, okay. Okay, so hang on, I need to count this. Great, lots of stuff here. So I'm seeing NASA's and SpaceX and Orbit. Well, I think I'll take that as a win, because I did guess SpaceX. Obviously, they're doing some really cool stuff, really high profile, and it definitely inspires a lot of people to get into the industry, to start talking about the industry. I think it's really good when companies are very public relations facing and are not just a technical organization, because it gets everyone talking about it. But SpaceX aren't the only company in the space sector, particularly in the UK. There's a lot of great stuff going on. There's reaction engines, as Sophie has worked with, Oxford Space Systems, Surrey Satellites. I had the pleasure of visiting them during university. They have a whole facility in Surrey where they're actually building satellites, designing satellites. They actually have a kind of mission control room, and you'll be sitting there in their office, and they'll press a button, and this sort of window will sort of glass away, and there'll be a whole sort of satellite control system tracking satellites around the world. It's really interesting stuff, and that's happening right here in the UK. So it's not just SpaceX in America. We're doing amazing things in Europe as well. And interestingly, Airbus Defence and Space actually developed the Mars rover in Stevenage, or part of the Mars rover in Stevenage in Hertfordshire, which is where I work. And not many people know that. So some really great stuff happening in the UK. So careers in aerospace. So I talked about aerospace as an industry, and that's really what it is. But within that industry, there's lots of different roles. There's lots of different things you can do, from engineer to technician. And I've made a sort of plain cloud or word cloud, as you might call it, just to highlight a few. And I did this all from memory. So I've been exposed to industry now for a year and a half on my graduate scheme in aerospace. And these are just some of the roles that I've come across that other people have, that I've seen in email signatures, that I've seen in job descriptions. You have architecture, so sort of the detailed initial design, finishing off the concept phase. You have manufacturing, structures, aerodynamicists, build technicians. It really varies. So some are heavily mathematical if you're into that kind of thing, very analytical stuff. Some more hands-on, so testing, building, some elements of production, really hands-on stuff. Even flight controls, simulation, really hands-on. But in addition to that, an engineer is not just being a technical person. You also have to be able to manage yourself and manage a project, and sometimes manage people. So I've also put managers and leaders there as well, because not everyone wants to go down the route of just design or concepting. Some people want to take those skills and manage a team, for example, or manage part of an organization. So they're all really important skills for engineers to develop. And all those opportunities are there. And you can dart around if you get onto a grad scheme or an apprenticeship or even early career. You can really try a lot of these roles out and find which one is best for you. And I have seen examples of people switching later in their careers as well. So you don't have to commit to something 100%. It's a very flexible career because it's so principle based. So that's sort of my introduction to the aerospace industry. There's definitely lots more, definitely lots I've missed. It's such a huge and vast industry to work in and to study in. But I'm going to talk a bit about me now, how I got here, and where I am now. So didn't start off with the plan to be an engineer. Again, like Sophie, I didn't really know what an engineer was. When I was at university and before, I thought it was the man that came around to fix the skybox. But the initial plan for me was to be a pilot. So here's some pictures of me. I actually started flying lessons at 14 years old. So that's me doing a walk around of the Robin HR200 that I used to fly. I got up to about 15 hours flying, was about to go solo. The flying club was about to call the newspapers because I would have been 16, or it would have been my 16th birthday that I went solo. But unfortunately, for other reasons, it didn't happen. But I did get the chance to fly a 747 simulator, as you can see in the top right there, at Cardiff Aviation, and that was really good. And I was dead set on being a pilot for ages. It was all I'd ever talk about. Thousands of hours on flight simulator, could probably fly an actual plane. At least I thought I could, an actual jetliner. But it didn't happen, and that's because the reality of the situation here is very expensive to become a pilot. But it set me on the right course, and I was at this sort of crossroads as I finished sixth form. You know, do I try and apply for flight school, or do I go to university? And I decided to go to university and study aerospace engineering. Still half one foot in engineering, 1 foot in being a pilot still, but I thought, let's go to university, get a fallback. So I went into university not really knowing what engineering was, but I'll move on to the next slide now. So I finished sixth form 2013, 2015 with A levels in electronics, maths and physics, and a few AS levels I didn't do too well in, so we'll forget about those. As you can see, the pilot option didn't work out. So I went to the University of Hertfordshire and did a degree in aerospace engineering. And that's when I started to learn what engineering was about, and that actually I quite liked it, and it was quite good. It was in depth. I enjoyed the analytical side, but I also enjoyed the kind of pragmatism of it. It wasn't just maths or physics on its own, which is extremely smart stuff. Perhaps I don't have the brain for that. It was just right for me in terms of its clutch to business as well, sort of design with intent and design with purpose. So I started university in 2015 and really started to enjoy university. I decided to go and do a placement year. So for those of you that aren't aware, if you go to university to study a degree, you have the option of doing summer placements or year in industry. So that's where you take a year out in your degree and then go back to university when you finish working there for a year. And I actually did that in the automotive industry. So I spent a lot of time in my second year of university just absolutely firing out applications to anyone that would have me. And I started working for a company called Valio, which are a French automotive company. And I worked in their research and development facility, doing a lot of design work and test work. And that was a really, really good introduction to engineering for me. A lot of good engineers there that really were happy to give you the time to explain things to you. And I ended up doing a lot of CAD work and a lot of testing work as well. And in the end, there was sort of a great way to sort of marry up the two, and I started designing test equipment that we actually ran a lot of the testing on. I then moved on and did an additional placement within my placement year at a place called Federal Mogul Powertrain, which was just down the road. So that was actually a systems engineering role, but a lot of testing as well. And I got to have the experience of doing some hands-on building processes then as well. So I actually worked with one of the technicians to develop a build process for a new prototype that was going to go directly to the customer. So that was a really good introduction to sort of hands-on engineering. But the one lesson I learned from my placement year, it was really good to find out what you don't enjoy as well as what you do enjoy. And I found out hands-on stuff wasn't, as an 100% time of the job, wasn't quite for me. I quite enjoyed project management, more the systems engineering side of things. So I finished my placements. I went back to university to finish my degree, and I graduated in 2019, just in time to have a graduation, and took a year out. Actually went out of engineering for a bit. I haven't put this on here because it's not really engineering, but I worked in a training and development consultancy, actually working for the people who helped to develop the apprenticeship frameworks. So I got a really good exposure to education consultancy, which was really interesting. And then in September 2020, I joined MBDA. For those of you who don't know, that's a defence company based in Stevenage, and I'm currently on their graduate scheme. I've been doing that for a year and a half now. So talking a bit about the graduate scheme, it consists of 4 6-month rotations, so it's a 2-year scheme in total. And I've had 3 placements so far, just coming to the end of my 3rd. 3 of those placements are in engineering, and 1 of them you can do actually external. So you can go to a different company, you can go into HR, you can do whatever you want. My first placement was in something called systems capability, and that's looking at tools and processes in systems engineering. So I worked to help develop a training course for one of our new tools, which was really interesting. Sort of learning how to use that tool, not necessarily as a practitioner, but more as implementing a change process within the business. I've had exposure to architecture, so system architecture, which is sort of diagramming and developing the detailed design of part of a system. And there's also some project management that I've done as well throughout the scheme, which is really just part of the job. So for my external placement, as I said, that can be quite varied. That can take any form, and it's really up to you to go and find something you want to do. As I said, some people have gone to different companies, some people have gone to work for our customers. It's really open-ended. But I decided to go out of engineering and go into strategy and international relations, and that's been really interesting because it's given me a broad understanding of how the business works and how the industry works, and how everyone kind of works together. And that's been really great because I can take that back to engineering now, and I kind of have an understanding of what I do as an engineer, how that interfaces with the rest of the business, and ultimately how the business and industry works. And I've really enjoyed that stuff. It's something that I would like to come back to later in my career as well. In terms of development, I've had really good opportunities on the graduate scheme at MBDA. So we're currently doing a leadership apprenticeship, which is something you're nominated for. So it's a level 3 supervisor and line manager apprenticeship, which will last for about a year and a half or a year, I believe. And I've had copious amounts of training, and you can obviously steer that to what placement you're on. So it's been really flexible, and I definitely feel like it's been a well spent year and a half. So I think I covered it briefly, but my graduate scheme is for systems engineering. And again, if you could go to the chat and tell me, what do you think a systems engineer is? Again, just put a word or put a sentence. It's completely up to you. Just have a guess if you don't know. or even put what you think they do. It is a difficult one, so just have a guess. Yeah, that's a good description, Phoebe. Yeah, big picture is a good word. Yeah, really good answers actually. It certainly took me a while to work out what a systems engineer was, because it's so broad. But big picture, in most cases, is, at least in my experience, has been a good description of that. And a really good way of looking at it is this here. So this is something called the V-Lifecycle. And this is basically a model of the engineering life cycle. And there's lots of different models you can look at. But this is quite a commonly adopted one. And a systems engineer can sort of own part or all of this V life cycle. And if you start from the top left and sort of follow down and up, so across the V, you start off at concepting and you hone in the design. You get to the detailed design, which is where you start to get into your architecture. Then you start developing your software and hardware. And then you move into testing, all the way up to acceptance testing. So sort of verification and validation, making sure how you intended it to work, it is actually working that way. And you can see these arrows going across. It should be a connected process. So you don't just go down and up. At each stage, you're constantly checking in parallel that whatever you're designing is working the way it should be as much as you can. And that all ties into saving time and cost. So systems engineering is a real kind of technical and project management role. And again, there was a comment about making sure all the parts work together. That is certainly the intention for systems engineering. So there's a sort of old analogy. If you go to an aerodynamicist and say design a plane, you'll end up with a paper plane or just a giant wing. If you go to a structural engineer and say design me a plane, you'll end up with a really rigid structure, but it might not be able to take off. So it's kind of making sure that everything ties up together and that everyone's working towards the same goal, and each technical discipline is represented equally within the requirements, so everything works together. So a bit of advice for applications. I spent ages applying to graduate schemes, absolutely ages. Obviously wondering whether I was ever going to get one. Persistence is key. If you don't get it this round, apply the next round. Be resilient. You get lots of rejections. It is a bit of a lottery, but you will get one if you're smart about it. And by smart, I mean respond to feedback you're getting. And if something isn't working, if you're not getting applications back, try and adjust things. So talk to people, ask for advice on CVs. If something isn't working, try changing bits. It might be that you're not meeting the specific guidelines of the job application you're applying for. So have another read of the application guidelines and change your application and try again. But most of all, the easiest way to get ahead is to start early. So a lot of the graduate schemes will say they're ongoing and open for up until April. Actually, a lot of the popular ones that open in September will be filled by October and November. And the application system might not reflect that. It might still say open, but the chances are they're filled. So just start early, start in September, start in August, because that is ultimately the easiest way to get ahead. And don't just apply for big companies. There's loads of smaller companies out there, SMEs, that are great. You don't just have to go on a grad scheme. There's lots of ways to start your career. So don't get fixated on just one option. If you want to work for Airbus, for example, have a look at their supply chain, see what companies they're buying from, and maybe look and see if they have any opportunities for graduates. It's a big industry and there's lots of tiers to it. So don't just restrict yourself to one option. So I'm just going to talk about my IET career a bit, just one slide. Personal development is really important, and that's part of the reason I got involved in the IET. Don't just develop your technical skills. Don't just develop, passing exams or degrees. Look to develop yourself as well. Look to build your network. So I got involved in the IET specifically to do that. And so since 2016 or 17, I've been involved with the Aerospace Technical Network. and I took over chairing the young professionals group of that in 2019. So it was probably, or sorry, 2018. So it was probably one of the youngest chairs in the IET, or at least definitely within technical networks. And I've been doing that sort of ever since. I also sit on the Young Professionals Committee as Technical Networks rep, so looking after and representing all 18 to 35-year-olds in technical networks within the IET, and trying to get more in as well. And these are just some of the opportunities I've had with the IET. So the President's Dinner, the annual dinner. I've actually been to Bangalore with them a couple of years ago, just before COVID, Amsterdam. And the top right was actually Lego League in Harrogate on Saturday, so the national final. I was a judge during that. So it's been a really good experience. And I would say that having the confidence to speak today and having the confidence to speak in interviews at assessment centres really was derived from a lot of the stuff I did in this sort of safe environment of volunteering. So I would really recommend that. So thanks very much for listening. Happy to answer any questions online or offline. If you want to get in touch, drop me a message on LinkedIn. If you're interested in the IET, the aerospace part of it, or technical networks in general, feel free to get in touch. And here's also some systems engineering reading if you're interested. The body of knowledge and the Nkosi handbook are really good. So yeah, happy to take any questions. Thanks very much for listening.
Amazing one. Thank you so much, Robert. That was really great to take us through that journey from, a whole high-level perspective of what the aerospace engineering industry is, and I particularly like the questions to engage the audience. Thanks for also taking us through your personal journey as well. I've got a question to start with. You mentioned that you did a year in industry, and I just wanted to ask how you feel that helped with your development in terms of your career.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it helped me because most of all, it got me used to the job application process for those kind of companies. So I kind of had an armory of sort of CVs and answers to application questions to work from when I started my grad roles, and I was kind of used to the process. It gets you used to sort of technical interviews, but when it comes to actually working there, it helps you learn about the industry and what being an engineer as a practitioner is like. Because in the year in industry, I think it's most useful because you get to know what you don't like so much, so you can then start picking what you want to do in the longer term. So I'd say they were the main takeaways for me.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And I actually wanted to just note that I particularly liked the advice that you gave for applying, especially the one of looking through the supply chain of the company. Say, for example, a large company that you're looking to apply for, say, an Airbus or Lockheed Martin or BAE Systems. So these guys have suppliers, they have partners that are not as big, but also employ people. And just to ask, in your own personal experience, between what you're doing now, which is the graduate scheme, and I'm sure you might know people who didn't go that route. What are the pros and cons, if you will, very quickly?
Yeah, sure. As a grad scheme versus in going straight into a job. Yeah, sure. So graduate scheme is really good. It gives you a great broad opportunity, and you can try lots of things at low risk, basically. The trade-off, I would say, is that you spend sort of 6 months or a short amount of time on each placement, so you move on very quickly. So perhaps your development within those areas is stunted until you get off the grad scheme, and the longer term development starts when you're off. If you go straight into industry, for example, you might get on a good project, for example, or go into a company, a really good opportunity, and your promotion opportunities might be higher because the company needs you to be doing that kind of front office work sooner. However, you might not get as many training opportunities, but that's not necessarily true. I think it's really up to the individual to make the best of both situations. And early career, you can't necessarily always pick, so it's best to go in with the bravado, of I'm going to make the most out of this, and I'm going to do what I want and make it work for me, as opposed to being dictated by the environment.
All right, lovely, thank you. We've got a few questions from the audience. Apologies for going over a little bit, we'll just be a few minutes. Robert, if we could just get quick answers from you on these.
Yep, no worries.
Someone has asked, if you're studying a mechanical engineering degree at uni, what's the best way to get noticed by aerospace companies?
Sure. So I think any project you can get involved with, which might be aerospace related, any modules you can pick, or just showing an interest, for instance, volunteering, or taking part in any of the aerospace projects like heavy lift, for example. I would say that would be a good way of showing your interest in aerospace.
Right. Sophie, could you put on your video, because I've got a question that you can also answer.
Of course.
You guys have talked about grad schemes. You seem both of you seem to be really good poster children for that sort of thing. So what's the work-life balance on a grad scheme? Firstly, Robert, then Sophie.
Sure. Work-life balance varies from placement to placement. In one of my engineering placements, it was very manageable. In my current placement in strategy, it's a bit more sporadic and fast-paced. It definitely varies, but in any good company, you should be able to manage your work-life balance, I think, particularly at the graduate level when it's focused on development.
Yeah, Sophie?
Yeah, so I'd actually say during your graduate scheme, you've probably got a bit more scope for work-life balance, because they understand that you're new to it, they understand that you're learning, and to an extent there's I don't know if this happens elsewhere, but in BAE this happens, is you have 20% of your time to spend on non-placement work. So it's still work, so you have to do like an extra project in the company or something, or you like run an event or in a camp or something, just to help you gain some experience elsewhere and some context elsewhere. So they appreciate that you're there for like a small amount of time, and that there's a limit to what they have from you. When you get out of grad scheme, it can ramp up. Again, to sort of reiterate what Robert says, it really depends on where you are and what you're doing. So sort of a few jobs ago, I had I'd say more spare time. This current job, less so. That being said, you are sort of the master of your own destiny, as it were. If you want a better work-life balance, you push for one. And I mentioned it in sort of the question and response, but I have a lot of hobbies. Like, I'm learning to fly a plane, I'm a figure skater, I teach dance. Like, I have, like I said, a very needy dog who's thankfully asleep during this, and a whole host of other things, along with all the things I do with the IT things. I started a charity. Like, those things I do in my own time. If I didn't have a good work-life balance, I wouldn't be able to do those things. I like having things in the diary that say I have to finish today at 5, or I have to finish at 6 today because I need to be here, and that kind of helps keep my head in there. It gets harder as you get further on and higher up, I'll be honest, particularly when they start giving you phones and access to your emails at all hours of the day. So it gets very difficult, but it's not impossible. And you just have to be very strict with yourself if that's something you want to go for. Some people are workaholics and just want to work all day, every day. It's not me, but if you want to do that, go for it. But it's entirely up to you and your own, sort of, as I say, master of your own destiny in that perspective.
All right, we've got 2 more questions that I would like, if possible, if we could, the people who've asked this question, if they could direct them to Sophie and Rob directly. And also, what we're going to do anyways, I'm going to copy these questions and send them to you both, Sophie and Rob. If we could get written answers, and then we can try to circulate them to the registrants, because we don't really have that much time to go through the answers. Yeah. Thank you both so much. Very quickly, I'll just run through a few announcements. Let me see. Yeah. So thank you all so much. Thank you to our wonderful speakers. I'm sure a lot of people have learned from you both this evening, myself included. And to the audience, thank you all for joining us for this webinar. Please do not hesitate to contact us for more information on how you can join. As you can see, both our speakers have benefited quite a lot from being members of the IET, and you've seen how much it's really contributed to the development. I feel like I feel like I should be doing more, looking at you guys. So make sure you follow us on social media. As previously mentioned, there'll be more of these events in the future, so stay tuned. You've seen the amount of quality that's come out of this event, and there'll be more like this to come. Also, I'm sure there are engineers that are in the audience. Please contact us, let us know if you would like to be on the waiting list to speak, to talk about what you do to encourage young up-and-coming engineers as well. Our next event is on the 28th of March, so just 1 month from now, and it features, incidentally, systems engineers as well, but I don't think this time, not from the aerospace industry. We've got my incredible co-host, Shyam Kulavarambatu, and Ishan Verma as well. Shyam is a systems engineer in the UK Atomic Energy Agency, and then Ishan is a systems engineer at Thales UK working on MOD projects. Thank you all very much. Do have a wonderful evening. All right.
Thanks, Toby.
Thanks.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.